Hey everybody, welcome back. So if this is your first time visiting my channel, please go ahead and click on subscribe. All right, so park sled or project sled, all right? So this is what we're talking about right now. So this is a sled I actually just picked up today. This is actually saved on my Facebook Marketplace for about 3 months, and I'm actually surprised it was out there for so long. But what it is, it's a 2012 Polaris 600 Switchback Adventure, and it has a bad engine in it. And like I said, it was on Marketplace for at least 3 months. You know, that's how long I had saved for. As far as how long it was out there prior, I really have no idea. But I know it was out on Marketplace for a long time, and I'm kind of surprised nobody picked it up. So, full transparency, I picked this sled up for $850. It is complete, but it does have a bad engine in it. So, the main reason I picked it up was my daughter has a 2019 Indy Evo, right? So, we've been toying around putting the Evolution kit on it. But if you look at what Polaris is charging for that kit, once you figure in taxes and everything else, it's around $2,000, right? And basically, all they're doing is they give you a set of A-arms, shocks, skis, a limiting strap in the rear, and a couple hydraulic shocks, right? And a couple other things, some clutch springs. But really, for $2,000, it's not a really good return on your investment, right? So I've been looking for basically part sleds for the better part of 2 or 3 months. And my original intent is to take the front suspension off of this switchback and put it on the Evo, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do in the rear later on. So I went and bought this thing, and with that intention. But why don't we go show and talk about what we actually got, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we should do with it. But because I think this thing has some potential on it, but really there are some unknowns. So why don't we go ahead and do a walk around on the sled, show you its current state and some of the things I'm kind of wondering about. All right, so here's the sled. Like I said, it's a 2012 600 Adventure Switchback 136. Skis are in great shape. Spindles are in great shape. The upper and lower control arms are not bent or anything like that. It's got brand new carbides in the skis. Skis are just a standard Pro Steer. It's got the Fox shocks in the front, non-adjustable. They appear to be in good shape. Plastics are in good shape. Missing a windshield. I believe we're missing the little cover for that. It's got the basic display on it. Mileage is unknown. Seats in good shape. In the rear, we got the pretty standard Walker Evans clicker shock with remote reservoir. And then for the front track shock, it's a Fox shock. As far as the track, it's a 1.352 Cobra that's studded. The track is in great shape. Took a look at it. There's no tear outs or anything like that. All the rear suspension, tube work, whatever you want to call it, all that's in good shape. Taillight's good. Plastics are good, like I said. It's got the mirrors, control center, throttle switch, and everything else. So, the guy I bought it from, he bought it from another guy who said the engine was just rebuilt in it. He then rode it, and he rode it for 7 miles. The engine blew up, right? So at that point, he decided to rebuild it again, and then he put about $1,200 in the rebuild, and then he rode it 12 miles, and then that rebuild also went down. So this is a classic example of he fixed the result, but they didn't fix the reason why it blew up, right? So why don't we look at basically the boxes of parts that we have. We'll come back to that later. We have exhaust valves, stator, starter, fuel rail, injectors. What else we got? Recoil, water pump cover, starter cup, fuel filter holder, springs, donut, bunch of bolts. Primary has seen better days. All the weights are rusty. The belt guard, oil bottle, intake cover, intake airbox, flywheel, the reed valves, couple belts, oil pump, case halves, and the throttle boot, and the throttle, car flanges, whatever you want to call them. Water pump is on the case halves, right? So why don't we go ahead and take a look at all the important parts, starting with the crank, right? Crank is good. All the bearings on the crank are good. They're not making any noises. They all roll very good. None of them are making any noises, right? These are the 2 cylinders that the previous owner bought. So this one looks pretty good, even though there are stains on it, and I'm not going to call them marks. They are just transfer marks from the coating on the piston, right? So if we look, that piston came out of that cylinder. I can't feel anything with my thumb or anything like that. That cylinder isn't good. So that cylinder can be reused. So this is the cylinder that went down. So if we look, all this is just aluminum transfer, right? So if we go down and look at the other side, there's some aluminum deposits, but all that can be cleared up with some muriatic acid. That will melt the aluminum right off. What's interesting is if you flip over the jugs, I think at the point of diagnosis, they measured the cylinders or whatever they were doing, and the dimensions are in millimeters right there, 3.899 and 3.896, right? So there we go. As far as the head is in good shape. No marks, no signs of impact or anything like that, right? The case halves look pretty good. Other than the primary, everything looks okay. All right, so this is where we're at. We need to make a decision as far as what is the fate of the 2012 Switchback, right? Because it's one of those things where you have to kind of look at everything, right? There are some unknowns, right? First is, I don't know if I have all the parts to put this thing back together. I think I do, looking at it, but again, the sled was taken apart by somebody I have no idea who his talents or abilities, and I think it was taken apart in haste and more likely probably in anger. So more likely stuff is probably missing, right? 2, I have no idea how the sled is electrically, right? Because I assume it was running based on what the owner said, but it could have a bad display, bad hand warmers, headlight could be no good, could have a bad voltage regulator, bad CDI, bad ECU, bad stator. Take your pick. The machine is 14 years old. Stuff breaks, and this thing was sitting outside. It looks like for at least a year. So all that stuff needs to be taken into consideration. So then we look at it, right? So if we decide to rebuild it, this sled, the engine would be on the 3rd rebuild on the original engine, right? But we had to look at everything, right? So we had to determine the root cause on what happened, right? So looking at the crank, as far as I know, that crank is the original crank that was in the engine. When I talked to the seller, he gave no indication that he put a crank in it. It sounds like he put a top end kit in it, new pistons and gaskets and everything else. But for all intents and purposes, as far as I know, the crank is original to the sled, right? But if you look at the crank is good, right? It shows no signs of heat in it. The connecting rods are not torched or blue or anything like that. So it shows no signs that the engine was suffering from heat in the lower end. Everything's lubricated. All the bearings sound great. There's no up and down play on the connecting rods. For all intents and purposes, the crank is great, right? And you would think with an engine that has had 3 failures at this point, because again, it's failed 3 times, that the crank would be bad. Crank looks good. So if you take into that effect, what caused the failure, right? So it's either an oiling issue, and we've kind of already ruled that out. So what are the other issues? It's either an air leak or it's a fuel delivery issue, right? So considering that this engine has been rebuilt twice, right? It's very unlikely, not impossible, but it's very unlikely that this sled burned down because of an air leak, right? It's hard to tell. I really don't know, but it's highly unlikely that you would have the same type of air leak that many times, right? Because again, if it was a really lean condition, you would see evidence of heat in the crank and other signs, and we're not seeing that at all. So kind of ruling out the air leak, right? So that boils down to a fuel delivery issue, right? So these CFI 600s, they have 4 injectors. So there's 2 that go through the throttle body, and then there's 2 that actually go into the cylinder. And if you are wondering why the 600 gets such shitty fuel mileage, that's why, because it has 4 injectors, right? But because of that, you have to keep an eye on those injectors. You have to service them, use good fuel, change your filters, and use non-ethanol fuel, and just maintain them and store them. Because what will happen is, if you don't kind of keep an eye on these things, those injectors will get clogged and they will get stuck. And when they're not spraying as what Polaris designed them to do, you'll run a lean condition in the cylinder, and then you'll have a burn down, right? So if you kind of take everything to an effect, right? The engine's been rebuilt twice, right, at this point, and the only thing that was never addressed or changed were the injectors, but you're still having the same result, right? So this kind of points back that it's a fuel delivery issue, right? So we do have experience with these type of injectors in the garage. We've actually never filmed any rebuilds on these sleds. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. We've actually rebuilt a couple 800s in here. Basically, they were kind of like a skunk works operation where sleds were bought under the knowledge of certain marital partners, that way, and we rebuilt them, and they were never filmed. But anyway, 800s had been rebuilt in this garage under the guise of like a skunk works, right? So I'll just put that out there, right? But anyway, one of the 800s that we've had in here, it was a CFI 800 that had a very similar issue. So we bought it as a project sled, rebuilt it, and then what we did is we sent the injectors out to get tested, and what they determined was one of the injectors had a piece of the fuel filter stuck in the injector, and basically it was stopping or was reducing fuel flow in that injector, caused the cylinder to basically go lean, burn down, right? So it's stuff like this that you think would never happen, but shit like this happens. Weird stuff happens. And this is why when you have a failure like this, you have to dissect the reason why it went down, right? You just can't be a part swapper without determining the root cause, right? And this is where we're at right now, right? So the reason why I went down that whole road is because we kind of have an indicator why it failed, but we still don't really know why, right? So if we do decide to rebuild this thing, right, because we're already in this thing for $850 as it sits, right? So if we decide that, let's go ahead and roll the dice. We're gonna rebuild it, right? A piston for this is about $125. To do a complete gasket kit, you're around $145, $170 from what I can see. And then to have the injectors tested, you're in it for about $200 minimum, right? And that's not replacing anything. And then if it's determined that the injectors need to be replaced because they're just bad, they don't need to be cleaned, it's just a bad injector, who knows? Everybody knows how expensive Polaris parts are. And especially with these injectors, the way they're constructed, typically you have to replace the entire set. So take that into consideration. We could have a bad fuel pump in the tank, right? And, you know, you can replace the tank. You can place a pump in the tank, that's about $100. And then, you know, the fuel sock and the fuel filter and everything else, right? So if you take into that effect, we're probably creeping up to a total investment up to $2,000, right? And the sled isn't even running yet, okay? So we already know that the primary is shit. That needs to be replaced based on the visual inspection on it. Again, the sled could be wonky electrically, you know, bad warmers, whatever. So again, one of the unknowns. And then there's just the service side of it. So it's one of those things where I'm already kind of leaning one way. You could probably already figure that out. But in reality, I bought this sled for the front end for the Evo because if I didn't mention it before, my daughter is like 5'1", 5'2", and she just physically fits on the Evo better than a full-size sled. She's real comfortable at it, but it's at that point where that sled kind of needs a full suspension to really kind of make her comfortable throughout the day for her to ride it, right? So that's where we're at. So I'm probably going to part this sled out, right? Use the front end on the Evo and then kind of put everything else out there. Because like I said, we have a good crank. We can clean up both those cylinders, send those out. It's a good secondary. The track on this thing is really good. It's got a good seat on it. The rear track shock is good. The front track shock is good. All the plastics are good on it. And it's got mirrors and whatever. So it'll be pretty easy to recoup the cost on this and probably make some money off of it. But let me know. What do you think? Should we just roll the dice and just repair this thing and send it out there and reinvest in something else and continue on the Evo? Or should we harvest it for its parts and say thank you? Thank you for your service, but you know what? We are making a sacrifice and we're going to use you in bigger and better ways. But let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts or your comments or your opinions. So drop me a comment and let me know. If you made it this far, I do thank you. And we'll go from there. So I'll talk to you later and have a good day. See ya.